in Virginia. Here is Jennifer Miskec or Miskec because she has a very special bond with Croatia. But today she'll be talking about American places.
Just a second. There you go. And just.
Let's see. I'm going to go down since it's a PowerPoint.
Let's see.
I have to use the mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sorry. Great. Yeah. No problem. All right. Thank you. Okay, so today I do want to talk a little bit about some American picture books. I take a particularly place-based approach to today's presentation. And specifically, I am eager to share with you a resource that I built for my students. As I was developing this presentation, it got more and more kind of classroom, kind of like from my classroom. But I think you might find it useful. So I don't think it's so far or too specific, I think, to be interesting. But I do, in order to talk about this particular resource and particular kind of approach to thinking about picture books, I selected 4 books that are, I think, very good examples of authors and illustrators who are placemakers. And I'll show you the distinction in a second of what I make in the resource itself. But to put it kind of broadly, there's books are set somewhere, but there's a difference in my mind very clearly that's between setting and placemaking. And so I'm interested in kind of how my students can begin to talk about that. In particular, I'm interested in this because as a children's literature person in an English department, my job is to teach the students how to analyze literature. And one of the ways that I really get them there as quickly as possible is to teach them how to isolate. So they look at a book and they're not overwhelmed just by their feelings about the subject matter, but rather they're able to think about it in terms of, let's talk about characters, then we talk about setting, to really kind of think about all the different aspects of the storytelling. And I always tell them this is a rhetorical document. So how is the reader, the imagined reader, constructed, and how are you're being persuaded? So it's a part of that kind of larger project. But this is the resource, and this is and to me, I find there's a lot of respect in with authors and illustrators, respect of their imagined audience, the child audience, when they take the time to create a sense of place, not just a setting, a generic interchangeable setting, but really spend the time to create a sense of place so that readers really not dependent at all on their real lived experience, but really any reader can be brought into a sense of place, this abstract notion of place that is more than just pretty. So that, they kind of give it a sense of how the humans interact with the place, what the not just what the landscape would look like, but a real sense of detail and kind of insiderness to the flora and the fauna of the place, that this place has a history. So in the different ways that authors are able to create this place with this place with a history, this place with its own particular climate and flora and fauna, how humans interact with it specifically as a place. And this is a side note, but the other day, my friend and I were walking here in Miskec, and we saw a park near where we're staying. And there was this great moment when we walked by the park, which had a fence around it. And two little girls snuck through the fence to get to their bicycles. And another guy, we kept walking, and another guy hopped over the fence to get to his car. And I thought, if I was illustrating this park, I would illustrate the park and the fence and the tennis court and all that, but I would definitely have those little girls sneaking through the fence, and I'd have the guy hopping the fence. And I thought, because that's how people use this place. It's more than just, okay, it's this big and it has this type of court on it and this type of fence, but how do people actually use it? And it's more than just how it was built or how it was intended to be used. So much so that the little girls were sneaking through a fence and kind of been bent open so that little bodies could fit through the fence. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly this, I got more of a sense of this park as a place than just obviously looking at the landscape or the structure of the place. I really am interested in and asking students to think about placemaking because it's part of this larger project of peace pedagogy and kind of thinking about compassion and peace. And so the students that I work with largely with this are at my university honor students. And our honor students are they pick whatever major they pick, but they do work on top of their major. And one of the pieces of the honors student experience at my university is a very place-based, place as text, analytical experiences. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the students to learn place as text analysis strategies, because all of those honor students are required to study away. And so there is this big push, specifically with we use Tim Creswell's Place and Introduction as a community reading. Everybody, all the honor students read this piece. And so I tried to build this with that in particular in mind. There's a lot of really cool scholars who have written on place and children's literature. Those inform this as well. But in particular, I really pull from Creswell because the students have to read that. And so, but it comes from this sense of, and this is my favorite quote from the first chapter in Creswell's book, that Introduction to Place. He says this, and I think this really captures why I find this so significant. Not only that when authors do this, but asking students to pay attention to kind of placemaking and want placemaking, and to learn to kind of evaluate stories or kind of give them credit for when they are in this placemaking space. So this is the line from Creswell that really inspires this conversation in the children's literature classes, the honors children's literature classes. He says, but place is also a way of seeing, knowing, and understanding the world. When we look at the world as a world of places, we see different things. We see attachments and connections between people and place. We see worlds of meaning and experience. To think of an area of the world as a rich and complicated interplay of people and the environment as a place is to free us from thinking of it as facts and figures. And so placemaking is in this kind of space of piecework and kind of building compassion. So that's why our students are engaged in this. And this is why this has become such an important part of my classes. So this particular resource is asking or kind of giving the students language for thinking about the picture book in their hands. To what degree is this author and illustrator making place? Creating more than just setting, but creating a sense of place. And so this is meant for them to kind of plot whatever book they have in their hands on this continuum. To the left side, it's kind of more a stage on which the action happens. On the right side, kind of it's more of an argument for that this author or illustrator or both are really kind of invested in this particular project of placemaking. And so this is just some language that kind of helps them get there so that they can evaluate the book in their hands according to these standards. And I don't think that books have to be, I don't think that authors and illustrators or books are only good if the author and illustrator is a placemaker. No, I just prefer this. And I prefer it for very specific reasons, again, in that kind of space of compassion and peace building. And so I like that the students learn how to kind of hold these books to this particular standard. So the books that I have to talk about today takes us on a little tour around the United States. I'll start in Alaska, move us to California and Florida and up to New York. And these are 4 books that do a good job of talking about placemaking a variety of different ways. We've got nonfiction, we've got fiction, we've got set in the past and the world belonged to us, and we're deeply nostalgic. And then we have a couple that are seemingly contemporary, though they are kind of could be anytime, really. She has a lot of little things in My Poppy Has a Motorcycle that could be the current moment, but it could be the 80s. You know, because the way fashion works in its cyclical style. And so I read it every time, like, it's the 80s. No, it's now. No, it's the 80s. No, it's now. But they're not marked in any particular way to locate it in a specific moment in time. But I picked these because it takes us around the US. It's fiction and nonfiction. It's different ways that these authors are really good placemakers. But that's why I picked them, because these are all fantastic examples of authors who engage in this placemaking work, and in very kind of different, clever ways. But what they all have in common is they showcase the child character as a part of this world. The characters in each of these books are who they are because of where they live. And so it's not incidental where they're from. It's incredibly significant to whatever's going on in the story, the characterization. And the way that the authors are able to capture these places. These are all real places it's either labeled as such in the story or in the author's note, discuss where they are set. But these authors all spend the time to really try to invest in the details of the place, the way that humans interact with the place, and really show how the child character is in this and kind of negotiating culture and place. But they're not outsiders to this place. They really are incredibly comfortable here. And so they tell their story kind of as people who are interacting in real significant ways, sometimes with adults. Sometimes the adults allow them the access, and the next one in particular allow them the access that they have to the place that they live in. But there isn't a sense that they are an annoyance or an outsider. They're very much invested in this place. They're from this place. And I mean, Michaela Goad, she's the one who won the Caldecott in 2020 for We Are Water Protectors. And this is her, she authored and illustrated this piece. And this takes place in Southeast Alaska. She's fabulous. If you ever have a chance to talk to her, one of the things that struck me, I was able to work with her a little bit, and she lives in Southeast Alaska and usually illustrates Southeast Alaska. And she illustrates for other people as well. So not all the books she's illustrated are in Southeast Alaska, but her books are. And she mentioned that she even goes out into the forest around her home to find the berries and the roots and natural items to help make the dyes and inks and colors for her books. And so she's a person who takes this placemaking seriously, above the land, below the land, kind of how the characters interact with the world around them. California, this is my puppy as a motorcycle. This one is interesting because this one, because of her father's motorcycle, she is able to navigate around this space. She was able to zip through town. But she is very aware of, and this is part of why I like it so much, she is very aware of not just what she likes about this place, but also the history of the place. She notices the murals in the town that talk about some of the big kind of social issues that she and her community are dealing with. And so she's not a person who only knows what she likes. She does know where the ice cream vendor is, but she also knows the larger struggles of her community. And so again, that kind of respect for this child character as a person who's aware of what's going on around them. They're not merely visitors. They're not just, they are paying attention to the world around them. I take us now to Florida, to Southern Florida. This is nonfiction. This is Marjorie Saves the Everglades. And this is about one of the environmental activists who stopped production that there were so many people developing the Everglades area in the early 20th century. And she was a person who advocated for stopping that, to save the Everglades. And she, part of what's beautiful about that, this is probably the least interesting of the four in terms of placemaking, but what I like is that the illustrator was working really hard to show why the Everglades and Southern Florida inspired her to be the advocate that she ended up becoming well into her 90s, like her whole long life. And so there's a lot of these images that try to showcase why she was so inspired to keep returning, to come back, to keep working towards saving this space. And finally, this is Jacqueline Woodson's The World Belonged to Us. This is the most nostalgic of all of them. This takes place in the 70s in Brooklyn. But this is so joyful. But what I love about this is there's so much play going on. There's so much movement. And there's so much going on in the background of this. The way that humans interact with the space, from the graffiti on the train to this kid holding court talking about, yes, boys do cry. And this particular scene here where the author or the narrator is reflecting on all the sounds of the space, the train going by, the different languages being spoken. And so it's this lovely kind of glimpse at this space as kind of how these kids it became their own. It was summer. This is our space where we left. We came home. We did these are all the different activities. These are all the ways that we engage with the place. So coming back to this, so these are 4 examples. I went very quickly, but these are some examples that the students are quick to figure out without me telling them where to place it on the continuum. This little dot comes really close to the placemaking side very quickly. And I tell the students, again, a book can be good and not be way over here on the placemaking side. But this is a standard by which we might hold picture books accountable, because it's deeply invested in creating that sense of compassion. It really is trying to show the child character as being committed to the place. Again, not oblivious. They're not ignorant. They're committed to the place. They are of the place. They're aware of the place. And so there's a lot of respect with the child character kind of as a person kind of in this place, and an author and illustrator who's willing to see the child character as having the capacity in that way. So that is what I have to offer. But I do really get a kick out of these books that have that extra level of setting. It's more than just the stage on which the action happens. But again, I keep going back to that compassionate side. I think it's meaningful beyond just pretty or clever. I think it really has heart. So thank you very much.